from 2014. Choices they make. One does not need to agree with everything that Caroline Glick writes, but her arguments are compelling. Obama is not stupid but a virtuoso manager, she writes, but procedure and management do not make a good president or even a good manager. The example shows someone who is bigoted, obstructive, and very nasty. Keep in mind that critics are quick to claim Obama is inept. His inability to rein in spending, his inability to address social issues in a presidential fair manner, his poor policies that exacerbates inequity all suggest a poor manager, or something worse. But when one examines White House activity, one sees a different side. Glick gives two examples, the first being obstructing the Israeli Defense Force in finding their soldier taken hostage and killed by Hamas. It would not have been hard or controversial for the U.S. to allow the FBI to give information to Israel to allow them to save the captive. But the White House put in place managerial blocks. It was later revealed the soldier was dead and Hamas still have the remains and have accessed the soldier's Facebook account. Secondly, there was an unofficial arms embargo placed on Israel as Hamas was escalating rocket attacks and Israel launched a short defensive insurgence to remove weapons and tunnels for Hamas. The embargo did not deny Israel supplies, but delayed them so that Israel did not have them. Compare that bureaucratic obstruction with the decision of Obama to allow Iran sufficient centrifuges to produce an atomic bomb within a year. These decisions are not the product of a mind devoid of organization. They are purposeful, wrong, and treasonous. Another highly lauded person has died at a great age. Ben Bradlee was 93 years old, born in 1921. He served in World War II before becoming a journalist. His time as editor for the Washington Post saw the printing of the Pentagon Papers and the Watergate story. He was aware of the identity of Felt, who was Deep Throat, and would have been aware of the conflict of interest for Felt, which made the witch hunt into Nixon a travesty of justice. It is okay for a journalist to be biased, but they should be honest about it, and Ben never was. In Andrew McMicking's defense, he probably thought he was being jocular before then deciding he had temporarily lose his phone. His Twitter account had now a deleted posting to someone that now their son was dead, he has been a grub who deserved it. McMicking is ALP. Had he been conservative, there would have been outrage from a lot of silent people who right now must be suspected of proving the depravity. ALP versus LNP. Albrechtsen contrasts Plibersek and Bishop, noting ALP Plibersek has jumped on empty symbolic bandwagons, calling out misogyny and making empty claims for political purposes. Meanwhile, Bishop quietly and effectively executes difficult political maneuvers. That's changed. Scott Morrison personally intervenes on migrants by denying a visa and any possible appeal on security grounds. Remembering Goff by his achievements and the press are blinded by love. Hate media mourns the deaths of Whitlam. Miranda Devine, Greg Sheridan, and Andrew Bolt separately reveal some of the appalling abuses of Whitlam's long forgiven by his hagiographers. Isolated issues. Pistorius is in jail for an inadequate set time of 5 years maximum, possibly less than a year. His sentence is based on the erroneous finding he had not the intent to kill his girlfriend. Steenkamp's family have accepted the verdict, but the prosecutor has a few weeks with which they may lodge an appeal. One suspects Pistorius' sentence would have been longer had he actually shot an intruder and not his brilliant, talented girlfriend. South Africa, with Pistorius and without Steenkamp, is a much poorer, darker place. Genius scientist Stephen Hawking has set up a trap with which he claims he can catch a time traveler. Typical of Hawking thinking, there are holes. The idea is to invite the time traveler after the event. If time travel is possible, then we should see them, or tourists. But we don't. The assumption being that they wish to be seen and look familiar. Another assumption is that the intent of wanting a time traveler to appear and the message they should is one and the same. However, we all see time travelers all the time. They just happen to be traveling with us at the same rate. Royal Commission into Institutionalized Responses to Pedophilia has heard a harrowing account of how police returned the victims to abusers on numerous occasions. It sounds familiar. Some children are abused without being raped and have similar stories. The betrayal of a child is never acceptable, and turning away is never a good thing. But how does a good person intervene? As the Stolen Generation myth shows, good intentions can harm everyone, including the child. Games people play. Giants win the first World Series baseball game 7-1. San Francisco got 3 runs in the first innings and had compiled 5 before the 5th innings, taking out the Kansas City starting pitcher at the 7th pitch count by the end of the 4th innings. The game was lost early, and the second, with a new set of starter pitches, will characterize the series. Kansas City needs to tie it up or give a very challenging lead away.